Yeah, I'm Elias. I'm from Austria, and I'm one of the 3 founders of Scale Energy. And what we do is we integrate batteries along the entire value chain of electricity. So at the customer, industrial customers, at the grid, and at generation assets. We have a 1.5 gigawatt pipeline, more than 500 megawatt, of which 126 already have a grid connection secured. And this amounts to 25 million in equity need for our pipeline until end of 27. And our focus when we started was to approach industrial locations like Grohe and rent land from them to build grid scale storage. So it doesn't have to do anything with the industrial side initially, because if you do that, it becomes a super long capex sales cycle with the industrial. So our go-to-market was just to call them and ask them if we can rent some land from them, and then do a grid scale project. So do a grid request, construction request on the ideal location. From this, of course, after some time, the energy manager asks, can we also have some behind-the-meter storage if you're doing storage anyways? And from this also, we will eventually develop into a platform where we integrate behind-the-meter flex and flex at generation assets, where we also add green BESS at more than 200 megawatts of solar parks since end of last year, when we signed this from a very large asset manager. And this is basically the entire value chain, which I mentioned in the beginning. If we look at the needs of AI, because this summit is also about AI, it's for us mostly in the analysis of an industrial site when we want to integrate behind-the-meter BESS. So we have our own in-house software. Of course, we are not an AI engineering company. We definitely will in the future improve that. I think for us, the huge value that AI will bring is that we have a lot of very granular data from our more than 250 sites, which we analyzed. And I think this is an asset we will eventually be able to use much better with AI. If we look at some projects, just this morning we announced our press release that we built a 4 megawatt hour battery for the world market leader in rayon fiber. It's a chemical fiber, and it's, for example, used in Formula 1 tires, so high-performance rubber products. So pretty exciting to build there a storage for them. We also, for one of the oldest paper companies in Germany, Dresden, built a 12 megawatt battery. Very conservative Niedersachsen company in Lower Saxony, where we one of our first cold calls actually. Where we over 14 months had a sales cycle to convince them and win them as a customer, and now are close to RTB with the project. And if we look at the larger projects in our pipeline, we have a 56 megawatt with a Stadtwerk in Baden-Württemberg, which also has already secured the grid connection. And as I mentioned initially, the solar assets where we add storage, or even in the new grid maturity process, because there's so many developers. We have one very large asset in our pipeline, which we are working on, which is at the former nuclear plant Neckar-Westheim. Also for us, this 11 people startup with only 2 million in equity raised in the seed round, so a lot of money, but compared to the huge energy companies we won this tender against, of the Gemeinde, it was a huge success. And yeah, really proud, but we are in the grid maturity process for this asset, so it will take another 3, 4, 5 years until we have a final RTB in this asset, for example. We have a pretty, there's a nice project pipeline. This is blurred on purpose, but it's mostly to show you need a lot of projects in the current market, in the battery storage market in Germany, if you want to achieve a conversion and actually get assets too ready to build. For us, the go-to-market is to right now sell these assets to an infrastructure fund, and eventually with this monetization grow into an IPP platform, which is the behind-the-meter storage and the storage at energy generation assets, which if we combine it, will enable us to have a structurally lower energy cost for our industrial customers. And with the current market events, but also structurally, there is profitable decades ahead for utilities or neo-utilities that build this infrastructure from scratch. Like in banking, if you think about N26, you just leave all the legacy baggage away and build a clean neo-utility, which is what we are trying to do. That's my two co-founders and me, and some experts, and of course wonderful Vireo, which is also here, and Climentum, which are VC lead investors from the last round. And we have sold the first 200 megawatts of our grid-scale pipeline, and this enables us to generate, once the projects reach ready to build, some money. But of course, we are looking to vertically integrate into behind-the-meter applications and to enhance our product there. And for this, we need mostly strategic access. So either capital, if we look at asset investors that have solar or wind, that's always very exciting for us to partner with, or partners that can enable us to acquire customers at a much higher speed, because the sales cycles towards industrials are just insane for a startup. So yeah, super happy for any conversation later, and thank you.